I wanted to specifically address facilitation because in one of your emails you had said, well, you had all these different questions. And the 7 questions I replied to, and I think you'll love those. I hope you do anyway, because it was a wonderful, I thought it was great for you to ask because it was kind of a blind spot in this process where I got you to a point and I purposely didn't want you necessarily, I didn't want to take an hour to prior to this to say here's a BCD class because so much of it is stuff that you have to uncover, and the fact that you wrote that email shows you're intrinsically into this. I mean, you say, I want more, you know, I've got questions, I don't know this, which is what we want, because otherwise if I'm just pushing information at you, it's doing no good. It's just going for rote memorization, and then I'll return, or what we call revert to default, which is one of the papers I sent you.
Yeah,
Because you want, yeah, and I think you'll like that. And we've got a bunch of them, and I'll send them, you know, when apropos. These, the 2 I sent, I think I sent 2, are particularly apropos. One of them is revert to default, which is, and don't take this wrong because you're not there yet, but like when you said on this class that I'm doing, you know, when we said, oh, you're going to do 3 wheels, and then we decided 1 wheel, and then you said no wheels because I want to make sure I understand this before I plan for this thing that people are paying for. Remember that? So that makes it an ideal time to bring this up, because 1, you revert to default right away because you don't know this fully, which is smart at this time, because it's your credibility. It's you know, people's money. You don't want to go up there and hack through something that you only know kind of halfway. Within that email, you mentioned facilitation. And, you know, this is not a facilitating class, but it is. But you can't facilitate it until you know what you're facilitating. And it's a big difference thing. So what I literally did just for you, and had you got the email, it's not a problem, but had you got the email, any of your friends you want to bring into this, as it is, I'll record it. And I'll do a facilitated wheel for you on facilitating in brain-centric design. Now, does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does make sense. And thank you. Because I think, you know, I entered into this process completely blind, right? Not really knowing, just having read a book, listened to an audio, and then now gone through this program, and then realizing, oh, wait, how does this obviously measure and compare to some of the other certifications that I've gotten through? And also, how am I supposed to hold myself in this work? Because that's what I do with all my certifications, right? Is
Yeah.
like, there's a responsibility of, if you say yes and if you progress on something, what does it actually mean to be that? And what are the expectations? So that we're both, like, you know, tracking accordingly. Because otherwise, it could just become something where it's like, okay, I learned that, and then maybe I'll do this, and then, you know, we
Yeah.
keep it moving. But yeah, I just really wanted to understand a bit more. So
And
cool.
after this, I took your 7 questions. Some of them were things that I've sent, like papers and sending you demonstrations or examples of classes. I think I've sent you 3 or 4 of those now from different people. 2 from me that I could do. So many of them are NDAs, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to do this one, because I can just do it and it'll be a great example of facilitation, and it'll probably change your concept a little bit. So I'm literally, you're a new student and you're with this group of students, and this is a course on facilitating brain design, or as I say here, uncovering versus covering. And these are terms you've heard, but this is meant to bring it all together. So in a typical class, we wouldn't have this interplay at the very beginning. You know, we would, I would, people do it differently, but you have to remember that in a class or presentation, that you're presenting for a big idea. And in this idea, my big idea in this one, this is before I start the class, so I'm breaking the 3rd wall right now. My big idea on this is for you to understand the fundamental shift of how you present now to how we present, the difference in that. And it's a big difference. So that's my big idea. When I when people start entering the room, I always have music going. I always have upbeat music going. Always, 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 always. So it would be something like this in the background when they come in. Can you hear that?
I can.
So people are coming into the room, you know, it's a good sounding music. Typically, sorry, wait. Typically the music will be going, and it's a feel good thing because every second of this hour is deliberate and intentional. So when they're in there, they may or may not know the music. I try not to go real popular, like I wouldn't do Michael Jackson. If I did, it would be like a #1 super smash pop that everybody in the world would know, you know, like Don't Stop Till You Get Enough, but it would be up, right? So it would be up. So when they're coming in, everybody's, hey, this is a little bit different. And then sometimes I'll have an introductions, or sometimes I'll say welcome and so on and so forth. Okay, it looks like, so I'll just go into it from here. So it looks like we have everybody in the class, and I appreciate you coming here. In fact, this is just going to call a learning space. And we're going to spend the next hour talking about facilitating a brain-centric design course. And the big difference here is that we're uncovering information versus covering. And that will make sense as we move along here. But the facilitation aspect of a BCD class, and I'll just read this for you on the screen, and this is the only time I'll do this. Facilitating is the provision of opportunities, resources, encouragement, and support for the group to succeed in achieving its objectives, and to do this through enabling the group to take control and responsibility for the way they proceed. That's facilitation. So in a long paragraph that's not mine, this comes from a facilitator out there in the web space, and I just love the quote. However, we as adults might look at this and go, oh yeah, I can do that. Well, not so much if you look at it in a typical classroom, because what we want to do is literally look at a course, a learning space, when we're presenting something like a well-planned dinner party.
Part of a dinner party is really to have camaraderie with people. You want to create an environment that really makes them feel like they're part of your family and your home. It's really about being comfortable at home, being comfortable when you're entertaining people. Comfort.
Oops, sorry.
Is really an important part of who we are.
Society, dinner parties, what people do after they've come home from work is as much a part of history and who we are as what happens in Congress or what happens on Wall Street. I think anytime you have a place to entertain and a society of friends from whom to choose a guest list, you've got yourself a dinner party. I think that was true in 1800, and I think that's true today.
Most dinner parties have the same main components, and to us, the first part is the welcoming.
Your goal is to warmly welcome your guest, but at the same time to show off your lifestyle and who you are.
It's the simple things. It's the music, it's the lighting, it's the conversation. One of my favorite little tricks about designing a room is really thinking about creating intimate spaces, creating an area where 2 or 3 people can sit and have a conversation, and having another area where a bigger group, whether it's 5 or 6 people. And then if those 2 areas can even face each other, everybody can be part of the conversation.
There's a lot of preparation. People put flowers out for a dinner party. You fluff pillows you might normally not fluff. You take time to plan that meal. You know where everyone's going to sit. It's a planned occasion where you and your home are on exhibit.
One of the tricks that I always tell people is when you have name cards on a table, always put the name on both sides of the name card, because that allows people who are across from you to know everybody's name. I always like to make a toast at a dinner party, because I think that's another opportunity, depending who the guests are, to make it more fun. So it gives me an opportunity to be a little lighter and more fun. And at the same time, it also gives me an opportunity to be sincere and to tell them how much I appreciate them and enjoy having them in my home.
After a good dinner party, you look in your living room and there's 3 or 4 people who are engaged in conversation. Maybe a few are outside. In the early 1800s, people went into the parlor and had their tea before they headed out for home.
I always appreciate after a dinner party when I get a thank you note. And the common theme that people say to me is, thank you for opening up your home and being such a warm host. When we first started, we created a mission statement.
The mantra of our mission statement is very simple.
We believe in comfort, period, for everyone. We never miss a meal, ever. We love to entertain. We love to be entertained.
It's really about being comfortable at home, being comfortable when you're entertaining people. Overall, just trying to make the world just a little bit better place.
Okay, so it might be kind of weird when you're thinking about facilitating a class, a course on anything from visions. Sorry, I didn't edit that out. Anything from how to do a new banking procedure to the vital aspects of your job. But I'm using a dinner party here, and you heard the word comfort a million times. So in a brain-centric design learning space, we use the word comfort as a safe space. And you notice they kept saying it takes a lot of preparation. It takes a lot of preparation. This isn't about building a deck and then presenting the deck. Here I am presenting the deck. It's about taking your big idea and letting the learner uncover it. So in this case, I'm using a dinner party as an analogy because when I have a group of people over, I want to entertain. In this case, I have a big idea, and that is for them to understand what BCD facilitation is like. And I want everybody to have a good time and talk and collaborate, not what you'd call a typical classroom. And this is why we do it. We don't want people to get bored. I mean, we now know, and you now know, that boredom causes an amygdala hijack. Nobody's going to learn what I teach unless they're engaged. And so we have to plan an engagement around this big idea that keeps people from boredom. That's the reason we're having this class today. So I want you to take out that piece of paper that we gave you as everybody walked into the room, or that you downloaded prior to this class. And at the top of it, you've got that box called initial thoughts. So I want you to take the next 60 seconds and write your initial thoughts and how can I best enable each individual in my learning space to intrinsically take control of this information for deep understanding. You've got 60 seconds, write it right there in that spot and go. Whoops, and go. So we would take the 60 seconds, and I'll telescope this for this purpose because you understand how it works. But for 60 seconds, they are sitting there and they are writing their thoughts on this question. And you can see that I set it up with the analogy. I talked about what we're going to do, facilitation. Then I gave that analogy of a dinner party where you're wondering, why the heck is he showing me this thing? Then I come out of it and basically give you that reason. Then I give you that 60 seconds for the challenge. Now, in a BCD learning space, the very first thing we do when we're planning our dinner party or our course is a framework. We give it a framework. And the framework is a challenge wheel. So rather than say, I'm going to be creative, we take the neuroscience of learning sciences in cognitive neuroscience framework, long mouthful, to give you a framework so you can engage these people, so you can collaborate, so everybody can take place in this party because we want nobody left out. We start with the initial thoughts, which is what we just did. We move into the multiple perspectives, which you're going to have for the next 15, 20 minutes. Then I'll give you time to reflect on those items for 2 minutes in a framework reflection, not just wandering, but I'll give you 3 questions. I'll then break this whole class into groups so that you can talk about these 3 questions and revise your thinking from how we started this hour. And then at the end of this hour, we'll all have the opportunity to report out on what we gathered, what we uncovered from the information that was presented. So we first start with a framework. Now, making sure you're engaged here, I'm going to pop up a little poll on your screen here, and I want all of you to take place and answer this question because I'm kind of curious. There is no right or wrong answers to this question. There's only your answer. And what I'd like to know is how much time does the typical facilitation in a classroom or presentation or lecture hall or whatever allow for each student to collaborate? So everybody answer there, okay, you know, because I'll pop up a poll here. The answer is 5%. 5% is the amount of time the typical student engages in a class. Now, this is a shocking thing because really this is all about the presenter in a typical classroom, in the behaviorist classroom, and the way we grew up. We got into this classroom, 30 people, we sat down, we shut up, we listened to the teacher, and at the end we had some sort of quiz or test or promised to have one forthcoming. And I might have asked a question or I might have leaned over and talked to my buddy, but 5% is the answer. So when we look at that typical classroom and we see how people are engaged, right now you can see the teacher there teaching, the presenter presenting, and he's taking up 95% of that hour talking, while everybody else is in a very passive, sitting there listening, might laugh once in a while, might have to do something, but by and large, not a lot of engagement. 5% time engagement. Now in a BCD classroom, the typical is 50-50. The presenter is online 50% of the time, and the learner is engaged 50% of the time and talking 50% of the time. It's just how you set this up. Now, I noticed out there a couple of the folks are yawning, and it's been a big day. It's a Monday afternoon in Lisbon. So let's do this real quick. I want everybody to put their arms out like this, scoot back. Ozioma, you do it too. Now put your hands up above your head, just like this. Now stand up real quick. Just stand up. Do the hokey pokey, turn yourself around one time. Okay, and sit back down. Because what we want is all that blood that's in your bottom up here in your brain. And if you're yawning, that means it's the end of a long day and you're ready to go. So I need to keep you engaged. And I need to watch the group to see if they are looking off or yawning or anything like that. Of course, in a live class, I would never call you out by name and said, I saw Ozioma lawn. But that's that facilitation. That's a BCD facilitation. You are looking for signs of boredom or entrapment or fear or distraction. You're looking for those things. And you can pop in a brain break or anything fun like I just did that had nothing to do with the learning that breaks you out of just sitting there passively when they're online. You can plan those in as well, which we sometimes do. So let's look into this basic,
the challenge.
Let's look into the aspect of taking a course and planning it like a dinner party. This is Ellen Thompson. She is the learning and get to the right screen here. She is the learning and development director for Nike on planning a dinner party that is actually a course.
The challenge was to let the learners kind of take control of what was happening and really getting them involved in driving the engagement. So there were a lot more hands-on activities to manage, and after you get over that kind of initial hurdle of you're actually, as a facilitator, you're doing a lot of things that aren't lecturing. You're allowing the learners to be fully immersed in what's happening. So you're having to keep your eye on the time, because it's things that you want to make sure that things are moving along at a deliberate pace, but you want to make sure there's lots of activity, there's lots of discussion. In a way, it's like you're hosting a really great, very well-planned party, and the learners are all guests at your party. And you have scheduled throughout the course of this party different things that are going to happen. You're going to introduce certain things that they're going to get to sample, and that could be you're letting them study something, and then you're letting them, teach back what they've learned, so that everyone gets to learn from the collective wisdom of the crowd. And but really, it's the vulnerable part is you're in a position of being the only source of information, and you aren't in the position of having all the answers, because you're going to rely on the learners to come up with their own answers so they can learn from each other. And I think that part was exhilarating. And I'll be honest with you, it was exhausting because it really, you're becoming like a gracious host, and you're really having to, you allow conversations to take place, and you were really encouraging everyone to interact with each other. And there's not a lot of downtime where, learners are just plugged into, doing an online lesson and they're just, mundanely clicking through. That wasn't part of the model. These were very engaging activities. And while you're not actually telling them what to do or wrapping up what they've just learned, you're floating around that class and you're popping in to find out, like, what are they talking about? If they have questions, you're answering them. Or you're answering a question with a question to move them along towards, the right direction. But the part that I found liberating is they do a lot of work. The learners are actually taking responsibility for what they're going to get out of the lesson. You have specific things that you're getting across, but you're getting them across in ways that the learners feel like they have come to their own solution. And it did feel kind of chaotic because it was new content that we were delivering. It was new methodology in which we were delivering it. This was really our test, or sort of our dry run. But what I thought was most amazing is we had multiple facilitators with multiple classrooms going at the same time. And, we had folks that their tenure as a facilitator or a learning and development professional was under 2 years. We had those of us that were, a decade or more. And all of us kind of felt that same, like, it was a challenge. It was like learning a new sport or learning any type of a new discipline. You kind of go through that learning curve phase where, your mental muscles are sore because you're doing things in a way that you haven't really done before.
What Ellen is talking about when she's talking about a well-planned dinner party is a well-planned dinner party. For example, this might be an outline for a typical facilitator's presentation on any kind of course, on any kind of subject. It might not be. A lot of people just build a deck and then they'll go up their knowledge because they're the sage on the stage. And that's how they were brought up in the learning community. I mean, they were learned to stand up there and take up an hour. And they might plan an hour loosely, or they might plan an hour more specifically like this, or they might even plan an hour that is a BCD type of classroom where you take the entire day and you literally, let me do it this way, and you literally plan out every word and every second of that presentation specifically to match your big idea. So I'll show you an example of a facilitation guide that we put together and do for every course. In this case, it was a 13-week course. This happened to be week 6, day 3. So I'm showing you the planning that goes into every single wheel on a presentation. First, we give the facilitator guide. Here's what happens and the things that are going to be touched on this particular day, which includes 4 wheels. But I'll give you an example of the planning so you understand it. We give directions on how to use the facilitator guide because, again, Ozioma might be presenting this today, but Daryl might be presenting it tomorrow, and Sam might be presenting it in Amsterdam on the following week. And we want everybody to present in the same way to get the same big idea and follow these directions so they don't put in their flair. We want their own flair within this structure because we know this structure is put together the way the brain accepts information and presented in a way that people love to learn. So we give them icons, tell them what all these items are for. We show them what challenge wheels are in this particular day because they've learned this as facilitators. We use the classic challenge wheel. This is the one that you're familiar with, Ozioma, with the initial thoughts, multiple perspectives, revise, thinking, reflection, and report out. And you can see here in the applied challenge, very much different. It's broken up in a little bit where we start with that challenge and some perspectives, and then we have a hands-on, hey, I just learned this, so let me go kick the tires. This happened to be a software course. So that second half of the hour is taking a modified wheel at the beginning and jumping onto the software and kicking the tires and having fun with it. And then we actually say, here's how it works. Each slide has a corresponding activity. Here's the landing slide. When we're ready to start, we advance the slide and we instruct all participants to read the scenario for the day on this course. After they're done, we say, you've learned a lot about coordination of benefits, but today we're going to focus on COB information in ASD. And this is what we do. We go into our initial thoughts and we literally write down every little action that corresponds with this deck. You can use it as a cheat sheet while you're up there. It keeps you on task, but everything is deliberate and intentional. And we plan that ahead of time as we're going forward. Now, let me go back here. Moving forward, you might think this is a different approach to putting something together, but it's not. Danny Pringle works for Aetna. We just showed you a couple Aetna facilitation guides. He's a senior learning and development director, and he went from a typical behaviorist model to the cognitive model, and this is how it's affected him.
I really enjoy this methodology and this concept. As a instructional designer and learning consultant, it makes building the content more enjoyable versus the older way of training, and that's just writing these long documents of text. Being able to really sit back and be creative with how we present these perspectives is a lot of fun. So, you know, I look at it from the facilitation aspect of using BCD and also from the development aspect. It makes it enjoyable to facilitate it, and it makes it enjoyable to develop.
Primarily because we give you a template in which to follow. You don't have to wonder what I'm going to do this time. We've got spaces where you put stuff, and when you put that stuff in there, that's where you can do your flair. But again, the goal is not to cover the information, not to say, here's how you do it, but to present it in a way where they have to think about it and go, well, how would I do it? I used a dinner party as an example here because we're planning it out. We've got a group of people. I want the right kind of music. I want the food to be there on time. I want to make sure everybody has the chance to talk. I want them to feel comfortable because they can't learn when they're uncomfortable. And this structure makes that happen. Whoops. I brought in Melissa Spencer as part of this group, and she is new to BCD, but the way she approaches it is probably how many of you feel right now.
I have been doing instructional design for a long time, and much of what was going on in the challenge wheel were techniques that I already was employing in my designs. But my boss said, hey, it's neuroscience. Try to follow what they are saying. So I did. I plugged my course into this framework, and I wondered, is that all? Will my students get bored of doing the same thing every time? Because you see, I work with a tough crowd that completely sees through gimmicks and templates. I really want them to learn, but also when they grill me on new techniques, I feel it, and I don't like that. So I planned out a week's worth of BCD challenge wheels. It took a little time up front to get all the challenges and disequilibrium moments just right, and then I had fun using the BCD Logophobe cards to think differently about the content. So now it was time to try it all out. The first couple of wheels were difficult for all of us. I was still talking a lot and making sure the students could parrot the right answers. And the students were engaged right from the start. But I was still wavering on directions for report outs and who did what. And by the third wheel of the day, we were all getting the hang of it. And I realized I didn't need to talk as much initially. The challenge had them talking and asking questions, which at the end, the students had better questions than what I could have made up. And by the end of the day, I asked them what they had thought of this format. One student said it was weird because we are doing the same type of things, but every time it's fun, engaging, and makes me want to start on one of the next challenges. And now I know what they mean. They are a different kind of tough crowd now, one that challenges me to bring it. And my initial question of will they be bored is so far away now because my students now trust that they are given these pockets of time in the day to really think about the material.
So there we go. We've done our multiple perspectives, and now I'm going to give you a chance to think about what you just saw. I'll give you 2 minutes, and what I'd like you to do, again, on that piece of paper that you've already printed and have by your side, to answer these 3 questions. What was surprising? What did I already know, but now see in a different light? And what do I still need help with? You have 2 minutes. Okay, 2 minutes is up. Now we're going to break you into the groups, and I want you to do, and we go through the end. And that's if you look at the time here where I have scheduled or how I built this particular course for you, I've only taken 20 minutes in multiple perspective, 20 minutes in starting the course to getting to this point of an hour. And now the next 40 minutes are students talking, collaborating on that content. So I've sat here and I've taken my 2 minutes. Now I get to get up and get with this group or online, get into this breakout group and go through those 3 questions with a group of, say, 5 people with somebody managing it. So if we're in this group right now, I'm saying, okay, I'm going to be the guy that reports out and takes all the notes here. And I'll even start off. What I thought was surprising was that even though it comes across as a series of different voices, different medias, I stood up, I took a poll, I saw 5 different people speak, I saw examples of facilitation guides, I saw exactly how you put this out. I now understand that much like a dinner party, when they come into my house, I have to plan every second so that everybody is happy. And when they leave, they go, oh, Rich is just the greatest. What a great party. I got to talk to Ozioma about Lisbon and Nigeria. Everything's cool. I'm off to the races. I learned all this stuff. What did you think, Ozioma? And then she starts saying, she goes, well, what I thought surprising, what I, this goes around for 15 minutes, lots of talking, lots of learning from each other, lots of going over our content. And they will do side stories. They go, boy, this reminds me of that time I went to NASA and we went into this room and we put on space suits and we got to jump around in this foam and it was kind of like space. I learned a lot about, what being an astronaut was like. It was like, so everybody's bringing in their thoughts and their experiences from their brain and adding to the collective uncovering of what my big idea was, how to facilitate a BCD class. That's all they're talking about. So when we're done with that 15 minutes, they go to the report out. I now stand up and I say, our group, the Super Brains, what we thought collectively was surprising was what we used to know and now we see in a different light, or what we knew and now see in a different light is this, blah, 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 blah. And this goes around because this is cognitive rehearsal. Now I've got the entire class talking about my big idea in their words, how they uncover it. And for the person not speaking in my group, maybe the quiet one, the orchid as we call them, they heard me say something that they said in our revised thinking. And they're sitting there going, yeah, that was my thing there. I'm part of this class. I'm part of the herd. I'm safe. I'm comfortable. I participated. I got something. Now everybody in the group heard what I got. And then at the end, when they do the report out, you as a facilitator are simply listening. Remember, you're not talking here in this hour. They're talking. All you're doing is saying, okay, group number 2, who's your captain? Group number 2 stands up. At the end of the last question is, what do we still need help with? That's your parking lot. That's your facilitation. That's something maybe you didn't cover. And all of a sudden, Ozioma stands up and says, well, that's really good, but I need an example of facilitator's guide so I can use it as a template and do my own thing when I do my slides. It's like, oh, okay, I'll make sure that's passed out, and at the end. And then after everybody does their report out, let's just say we're going to meet after a break or tomorrow. I usually leave them with a long-term potentiation type of deal. Hey, before you check out of this group online meeting, if you could do me a real favor, real quick, in the chat, if you were to teach or present or make public something that you really took out of this last hour, what would that be? In a word or a couple of words, what was it that really resonated with you in what we just covered? I don't want you to cover right now. I just want you to write it in chat and tell me what that was. Take 5 seconds. Everybody puts in their chat thing. All right. Class is over. Thanks for coming. Happy days. And that's how you facilitate a class. Again, 30,000 foot view I gave you. However, you can see that the planning that goes into one of these classes and the different voices are all meant for you to uncover how it best works for you. I just want to really get across, if I had scaffold these things, my scaffolds would be safe and articulated, meaning put down into a facilitation guide where I know no matter what, I can pull up this guide and, oops, come on, 1 second. Hold on. Oh, sorry. Sorry about that. I had a dog that was going to do something bad. 1 second. Okay. Okay. My apologies on that. I think it was yakking on a piece of grass, to be honest. But in that brief overview, what was surprising to you from what I just showed you?
For me, what was, I guess what was surprising a little bit is just how much it feels very, I don't know what keeps coming, but it's like play by the book. It's like there's a playbook, you know what I mean? Which I understood before, but you going through it, I was like, okay, that's it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it is very much a playbook. I mean, it's meant to come off, not, it's kind of like ice skating in the Olympics. You know, there's another analogy where everybody loves the Olympics when they come. Almost everybody watches the ice skating dancing, and they make it look so beautiful and effortless and wonderful. And it's just a song and two people skating. It's not a big deal. But you don't see the 4 hours of 10 hours a day of practicing. You don't see that build up to it. It's what happens in like a behaviorist kind of models. You'll build that deck or have all that stuff, and then you'll go up there and you might have some notes, but you'll go up there and you'll be a presenter because you know that information better than anybody, and you present that information and you present it like a PhD. You know it. But what you do is present it for rote memorization. That's literally the basic class. There might be some interaction, but you can pull that away just by all of a sudden with this group of people like Ozioma, what's the answer to question 12? And all of a sudden you're like, ugh! We don't want that in the classroom. We want them thinking about our big idea. And to do that, it takes a plan. And in those items that I showed you, I could break them out if we had more time and say, this one was the occipital lobe, this one was the temporal lobe, this one was this and that.
Which item? The multiple
in the multiple perspectives, yeah. So for example, show you this real quick. In the slideshow. There we go. So here's my perspectives. My title slide, my introduction saying this is what we're doing, facilitation. That's all it was. Then I did my analogy. This was the dinner party video from the New York Times. Then I did my disequilibrium. This is what happens when you don't plan a class. Then I did my challenge. And then I go into my perspectives. First, I spoke and demonstrated. This is kind of a parietal lobe where I'm doing a combination here of speaking and showing you something. Remember, I went through the 5 little things here. Then I got you involved. I'm having you touch and play with stuff and think because I'm asking you to do that. When I showed you that 5%, I remember seeing your head going, wow, 5%. And then I confirmed that with a typical class. Yeah. And now I see a class in the background. The teacher's always talking, and yeah, I don't really get that involved. Then I show you the before and after with the BCD class. So I've given you an hour of me giving you an introduction. Within that introduction, I did have you do a couple little things like a typical classroom, but I only took up the first 20 minutes of that hour with my perspectives. The rest of the time, it's all you. You're writing by yourself. Then you're writing in a we group and speaking and talking and having fun, and then we collaborate. So this is where that structure comes in. Then I give a produced video from Ellen talking about how she does it. Then I show you how detailed it is, first with a slide that you must read. and kind of get an example like, oh yeah, this is a format. And then I brought up an actual facilitator guide and walked you through the planning that goes through that prior to, and every one of these photos is a deck photo, shows you what's up. Then I came back, now that I've shown you this, and I say, why is this better? From another voice, Danny, where he says, I used to do it this way, now I do it this way, it's more fun. I give you a live, this was supposedly a live, individual saying, hey, I just learned this facilitation thing and it was scary at first, but what I found, it's almost like a sales technique. Do you know the feel, felt, found technique by chance, Ozioma? It's the quickest way to deflate an argument or turn somebody's thinking on what you want them to think. Like, for example, I'm showing this thing and you're saying, Rich, this makes no sense to me. And I'll do it simply, but I'll say, oh, I know how you feel, Ozioma. Bob felt that way, but what he found was, I know how you feel. Bob felt that way, but what he found was. So I acknowledge your feelings. I'll give attribution to another or myself or an experience. And then I put it back into my segue the way I was doing. That's a sales technique. Feel, felt, found.
Yeah, well, I've definitely experienced it before, but now I know it's a sales technique.
Well, it's a tool for teaching. And by sales, it's a teaching technique. It's a facilitation technique. It's a heckler technique. Somebody stands up and says, blah, 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 blah. I know how you feel, Bob. You know, in fact, I felt that way the first time I did this. But what I found is after I did one or two of these wheels, all of a sudden I walk into something infinitely prepared because I know that I've got the second half of the hour to watch this class, to facilitate this class, to see if anybody's yawning, to see if anybody's disengaged. All I have to do is walk the room and touch them on the shoulder and say, hey, pal, you know, do my job. And then the rest, second half of the hour is structured. This is them. This is where the learning, actually revised thinking is where the learning really happens. Because reflection is, I'm now looking at this content. I just sat through 30 minutes of something I've really never sat through before. And I really get time to think about it. Just like a computer with random access memory. No class gives you this, ever. They might say, think about that for a minute and we'll talk about it. Well, then that still gives people the reins. They don't know how to think. Structure that thinking. And these are all safe questions that are designed to help them think, and not only help them think, but have them take their life thoughts and experiences from that moment and put it into this particular content about facilitating a class. And just like you, wow, I had no idea it was that structured. And it is. I mean, and it really is. Now, building a class, once you understand how to do this, doesn't take long. I came into work this morning at 5 a.m. and this is true because I didn't spend the weekend building this. Today happens to be a holiday here, Memorial Day. I don't know if you're aware of that, but
I do know that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it's, but I knew what I had. I knew I had the resources for this, but I'm not comfortable in a wheel where I can go grab a bunch of stuff, put it in here. The only thing I didn't do is build a facilitation guide, but I typically would if I was presenting a class because I want to leave no room for error. I don't want to revert to default, the paper that I sent you. I don't want to go, oh, I'm going to do it this way because that's how I've always done it. Well, how we've always done it is behaviorist. We want people to think. We want people to uncover the information. And this is the structure that we do it. So when I put together a wheel, again, my main thing was to make sure I had a big idea, and that was for you to understand the difference of facilitating this way versus facilitating in a typical presenter way.
But why is it called uncovering versus covering?
That's for the student. That's for the learner. The goal of facilitating in brain-centric design is to present the information so they can uncover it, not so you cover it.
Got it. Okay. Notice
I did not do a class on, here's how you build a facilitation guide. Here's how you do this. Here's how you do that. Here's how you do that. I didn't give you that recipe. You know the wheel recipe now. You've gone through BCD and you understand that there's initial thoughts, a challenge, a disequilibrium, multiple perspectives. Those perspectives need to touch different lobes. You understand those basics. But when you put it all together, the difference is this dinner party thing, That had nothing to do with a class and how to do something. That related everything to comfort and structuring a couple hours where people come to your house and all were entertained. I'm still pulling from that analogy there. I don't want this to seem like a class because we all hate classes, but we all love a good party. So I'm going to put it into a party framework. Why? So we don't get bored. Nobody wants to have a party where it's lame and everybody goes and talks smack about you because you don't know how to have a party. We don't want that. We don't want that with teaching. Me here now on the challenge. How can I best enable each individual to intrinsically take control of this information for deep understanding? I could probably do a better job at that to make it a little more palatable. But basically, it's how can I improve? Then I give a structure. Then I get you involved so that you own this information. Oh yeah, the old way, 5%. That's not going to work. I didn't like that. I like that. There's talking. Then I take Ellen and she talks about that whole framework, brings my dinner party example to a classroom and the things she went to. So now you understand she's planning. Then I give you something that you can touch and feel in your hand, this facilitator guide. And I showed you here, but I would have had you, it would have been a handout or something that you'd actually get to look through and go, oh my God, this is like 8 pages for an hour. Well, yeah, it probably took 20 hours to get to that 1 hour presentation. But that 1 hour presentation I can do online or in person or give it to my friend Sam, who understands BCD or understands a facilitation guide, and they can pull this off. And then I give proof that it works by a senior guy that has it in place. Then I go to a novice person that comes in live and says, boy, I don't know about this. This seems like weird, until I actually got into it. And now all of a sudden people really love it and they want to do more. What's the next one? What's the next one? Then we give them that second part of the half hour to talk about it. And that's the big difference between the two in facilitation in the grandest sense. When we do a facilitation class for our corporate customers, like we're doing a T3, train the trainer, you familiar with that term? Depending on the engagement, that class might take an entire day and we'll do 4 wheels. Or in the case of Aetna, we took 3 days to do train the trainer because it was a 14-week course and all the facilitators were brand new. They were people who got promotions, they've never facilitated, and they did that on purpose because they didn't want somebody coming in there and using a behaviorist method. They wanted people to teach this way. And so, I mean, it's flexible and you can do a lot of stuff with it. And this was a broad overview, but do you know more than you did prior to starting today on a facilitation of a class? Do you feel like there was something there, even though we didn't get to go through the wheels or at the 3 R's at the end fully?
Absolutely. Yeah, I definitely feel like I have know a lot more about BCD facilitation specifically. Yeah.
Okay.
And it's clearer for me. Yeah.
Super. Well, that was my main goal of this, was to make one, kind of show you an example, not of a video. When you look at the videos, you'll see the same structure done by different people. I think 1 or 2 of them are from me, 1 or 2 of them are from Missy, so on and so forth. And that's the big difference. There's very little of me talking in this thing. I introduce perspectives, and I'm always inviting you. I don't say, I'm now going to show you, or I'm now going to present, or this is all about me. I'm just the facilitator. But it's a heightened role because you have all this information and you want them to uncover it and you want them to think about it. And then when they get into that revised thinking, that's really where your magic gets to happen, whether it's online or in person. Because if it's in person, you can go from table to table, listen in, say this, see if they're going in the right way, to understanding the concept. And online, same thing. If you've got the breakout rooms, you pop into a breakout room and you listen in and help out. And you can see, yeah, it's kind of like this, or add to the group or what have you. The goal is to get them talking about this information, because when they're talking about it, they're using their thoughts and experiences attached to this big idea. That's the only thing we're presenting, is facilitating in BCD. And we want them to ask questions. And we want Harry over here to say, this reminds me of a time, and he goes into some story about something that he did at the swimming pool where the guy was talking about, holding your breath or something, and it didn't really hit home until they jumped in the water and they had to hold their breath. You know, I mean, they actually got to participate in the exercise. Whereas most classes, it's like, we covered all this information. Now, let's see what we remember. So typical, and it's almost weird. Once you really get into this, it's hard to go back to that, where you're going to sit there and exhaust them for an hour, which is going to be boring anyway, and then test them on it, which is going to scare them. Very
Now,
kind
do you feel that there's certain types of courses or in kind of content or programs that lend themselves more towards BCD versus other more, I guess, traditional or behaviorist methods? Because I mean, I look at this and I'm like, okay, well, I can't see this working for everything, but I can see it working for the things that it works well for. Obviously, it works well for, but I'm just kind of like in my head, I'm like, I could see this working better for certain things than for others. Or would you say it works for everything?
Well, I want to say everything, but with an asterisk. So I want them to deeply understand what I'm talking about. And for example, let's just say this was the beginning of a day of learning how to facilitate BCD. I would start out this way because now you can't help but think differently about facilitating a class, because I just planted this in your skull and you owned it, you uncovered it, you related it to your stuff. And now it's almost like we're in that revised thinking and you're saying, yeah, do you see it for everything, or is there stuff that lends to it because I do things a different way? So I might set up a day, an entire day, starting with this wheel. And the next exercise wouldn't be in a wheel. It would be all about you building a course. Here, kick the tires. Pick something you want to build a course of, and we're going to take the next 2 hours and do it. And we're not going to do it in a wheel. We're going to talk, and we're going to do this, or we're going to have somebody else and come and do this, something to where it's not sitting here in a wheel. We might take some of these perspectives. Now, I just used an hour. What if we did a wheel for an entire day? One wheel for an entire day, meaning that somewhere in the middle, that multiple perspectives, it's not going to be 20 minutes. It's going to be 4 hours. So we might start it out with 1 or 2 things and say, okay, I want you to open up your computer and go to this deal and start doing this thing. Or we're going to break out into groups for the next hour, and everybody has these building blocks, and you're going to build a tower. Who has the tallest, strongest tower at the end of the hour? Go get them. And the reason we're doing that exercise is to knock home one element of what we're doing. For example, I might do this facilitation just like I did here. And then the rest of the day would be building perspectives. 1 hour or hour and a half might be just on occipital lobe. And I'd have a little workshop where you get to play around and kick the tires. But at the end, I would come in with those 3 R's again. We just spent 5 hours doing all kinds of stuff. And we're counting those as multiple perspectives. You follow me so far? Yeah. And then at the end, I want them to think about it. I don't want to send them home wondering about it. That's different because there's no framework of that. When I think about it, I put them into that framework. I give them reflection time without talking to anybody. It's like, what was surprising about this day? There's no wrong answer ever to that. Then when they get to groups, now we actually get to collaborate. And it's like, well, I spent that hour on the occipital lobe and I did this, and you're over there going, well, I never did it that way. That's genius. I want that. And guess what? You just learned because you're thinking about occipital lobe. You had your idea, but Truman over there gave you this example and you related it to something in New York. And all of a sudden you're on a whole new wavelength, but you're still in the occipital lobe multiple perspective building phase.
Got it.
And maybe at the end of that, we might have 1 or 2 people present what they did. You saw in that video with Ellen, lots of people standing up with charts and whatnot, those big giant sticky 3M charts. When we break out into those groups live with people versus online, we have each table has one of those giant 3M sticky note deals, and they write. That's what they use as a group to doodle their answers on. What we thought was surprising. And then when they report out, they take that sheet and they come over here in front of the class and they put that sheet up there. We're the super dupers, and what we thought was surprising was blah, 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 blah. And everybody's like, and there might be interplay back and forth. But the idea, again, is to get them up. And now I'm going over all those multiple perspectives as our group, we went from a me to a we with the group, and I'm going over this and you're over there going, wow, I never thought about that. And then your group comes up and does that. And then we take a break.
Yeah.
They have
That helps.
been,
That helps.
yeah, wonderful. Yeah, they're engaged.
Because when you expand it out, then you can say, okay, because in my mind I was like, how is 20 minutes going to be able to cover more of the complex, aspects of training? For me, I didn't know that we aren't necessarily held to the 20 minutes of multiple perspectives. That
But if I would have told you that at first, you would have been wondering about the wheel. Because I've put it on an hour. And again, you just showed me that you've intrinsically looked at it this like, well, there's certain things that aren't going to fit in a 20-minute in my world. No way.
Yeah, because I just was like, when you say, okay, this is the model, this is how we do it, it was put in an hour long, you're like, okay, well, I'm basically creating these hour. And then also because we also in the earlier potential design of our workshop before, it was also like hour and 15. So my mind was like, okay, well, what are the typical ways in which this is done? And now that I know that it's not held to that, and that what we're looking at is the overall design, not necessarily how long each component is. Now and then there's also a focus on it being interactive and building and exploring and working with things and experimenting. Now I can say, okay, I can understand that now, because then you could do is, okay, now take some time and work on this problem. Let's say if it's math, like let's say a math challenge, like how would you cover math in this framework? But if the opportunity for them to actually work on things within that, now you're like, okay, I get it. Because otherwise I was like, how would that work for?
No, math is great. I mean, I might do an equation on square footage, and I'm showing you X times Y equals T or whatever the equation is. And we go over it like a typical math professor. And might give you a couple of questions to figure it out. Okay, everybody, now let's walk out to the horse barn, because Ozioma is going to demonstrate cleaning 166 square feet of stalls. Now we get out to the stalls and everybody, okay, Ozioma, how are you going to do 166 square feet of stalls? Well, now that you know the equation, you can sit there and measure off 166 square feet, right? And now they're seeing it, right? And playing with it. And that would be another perspective of it, and then you just, okay, how could I do that for this lobe? Or how could I get them to look at that differently? That's where the fun comes in on this, because you want them to be using their mind, thinking about just the one thing, in this case, facilitating in BCD. And you did, because you say, what do you still need help with? And you just brought it up. Well, do I have to do just a bunch of hours? No, it's like saying, does dinner have to be meat and potatoes? Hell to the no. I mean, dinner is what you make it, where you make it, with what you got, and who's with you. But the concept of dinner, like the challenge wheel, is, the final meal of the day on a plate.
Yep.
But in reality, dinner could be it doesn't necessarily have to be the final meal, it typically is, but it could be in a field with a table that's 50 feet long and 100 people with all this different stuff and all this different wine. That's why we want to anchor it in the 1 hour, because most of us teach in an hour or have brought up in that hour mode, and then say, okay, that's the basic part. The real magic of this model is the challenge, time to write their initial thoughts, because that's their baseline thinking before you've presented anything, and the 3 R's. And really 2. Reflection, that 2 minutes by yourself, absolutely, you can never get rid of that. And the revised thinking, where they get to collaborate with others and feel safe about it, absolutely imperative. The report out is a cognitive rehearsal piece. The real learning, the real learning where it becomes yours, is in that revised thinking. Because now you've got 15 minutes, you get to spew it out to other people. I think this, I thought, you thought, wow, oh, gee, I never thought of that. Lots of time to think about the content and collaborate, because we're finding this out, and I'm sure it's the same in Lisbon with all this quarantine stuff, that when you strip away all the freedoms, or whatever we want to call all the stuff that we've been under, What's the one thing we really miss? Human connection. We're a social animal. We like to be at the table with other people and talk about stuff and share stuff. It like hits this model home, because if I can sit there and talk about my feelings about this thing and now it's real and it's safe and it's nice and I'm in the herd and everything's great and you feel the same way and I'm not alone and it's wonderful. We just replicate that in this model, typically on a 1 hour in a classroom type of setting, but it could be an entire day, one wheel. It could be an entire week, one wheel. Not ideal that way, but we love to open up the day with a wheel. Like when we were talking about yours originally, love to open it up because now they are anchored, flat out anchored in my content. And the rest of the day is all about that. I can present and I can lecture and I can do workshop and all this other stuff. But if I set it up on a wheel, like an hour-long wheel, and then I set up the rest of the day on a 6-hour wheel, where again, at the end, I have them come back and think about it and revise their thinking and then call it a day, they own it and they own it forever. And there was no test and you were never put on the line and none of those kinds of things.
Cool. Very helpful.
Yay. Well,
because now it also helps me to understand, like, moving forward, what would that look like in terms of, the other thing is like the multiple perspectives and gathering the content in order to teach, or to facilitate the learning experience, that it also then becomes you getting very adept at organizing your folders and your files and everything very, 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 very well because you got to find stuff, you know what I mean? So I definitely would, it opens up another question about what are the recommended organizational systems, right? The file folder systems that help us expedite this. That would be an ancillary question that I would have.
Well, and I'll follow up with that via email, and we can talk about it next week as well.
Course,
but
yeah.
I mean,
no
but
rush, but it's just in my mind. I'm like, oh my gosh, like, how you organize this and pull all this together is going to be key. And then obviously next steps would be me identifying what it is that I want to develop a workshop on, a training on, and then developing it.
Which you've done, the one for your PhD that better serves your reason for being in Lisbon right now, where it's like, oh, if I build one for this, it makes perfect sense.
Yes. If I do, actually what I'm thinking, there's many different ideas, because then I start, today I was interviewing someone for this podcast documentary that we're doing, and he started asking me questions about startup, which is something that I'm always getting questions about. And so I was like, wow, wouldn't it be great to create like a BCD training that's focused on helping startups? So, or, that would be so easy to do. And would also get a lot of traction, right, in terms of entrepreneurs and founders and all that. So there is a piece of that, which is still also rooted in my research. So I just have to see, because again, there's a startup world and there's that vision, and then there's like the corporate world that I'm also a part of. So we just have to see which one would serve, because what I want to do is develop something that would enable for us to all move, for it to move forward and be something that can be done over and over and over again.
Yeah, and along those lines, and I'll give you a quick sneak peek of this, and this is F for your eyes only.
My eyes only. I love this backdrop here. Oh my God.
This is where I live.
I know. I can't wait to see it one day. This is so beautiful, peaceful.
Yeah, it is so wonderful. So this is not launched yet, but the Neuroscience of Learning Academy. So think of Udemy or Skillshare for only neuroscience of learning courses. Yep. And you're going to be faculty. So when you have that course that can be done for any business, you can put it on here at a price and sell it, or direct people to it for free, and so on and so forth. This is not ready yet, but you can see real simply what it is. So if you wanted to go to the School of Vision with Ozioma and you clicked on
that would be cool.
Well, that's what I'm saying you can do. So this would be NOLA.academy /Ozioma. And then all of your classes will be on this platform that you can sell forevermore. And yeah, it's really neat. So, I mean, we're filling it with all the classes that we have to kick it off. It's not kicked off yet, but it's here, and it's going to be dynamite.
Nice.
And really exciting.
Neuroscience of Learning Academy.
Yeah, so NOLA, like New Orleans, NOLA, it's also neuroscienceoflearningacademy.com, which is a hellacious URL. But NOLA.academy is what it is going to be. We've not released it. We won't do so for a week because we're still loading all our stuff on there. But there's like 3 versions of BCD on here. There's the online self-paced one. That's the one you went through, but it would be with none of this. There's the online facilitated version, which is a group of Oziomas, like up to 50 per group when we do it. So everybody goes through 3 of the sections, and then on Wednesday we all meet for 90 minutes and we go over it like the Reflect Refi. And then there's the BCID version where it's one-on-one specifically for you, and that's what you're doing. So just the 3 courses, you know, if you look at it as a business model, which we spoke of before, is like, how do we adapt to this? What we did is took all of the stuff that people are doing, and it was funny because I have all these courses that we were selling via BCD, but it's kind of a hassle via BCD because BCD is both a framework, it's a course, it's a book. Oh, wait a minute, you do BCD for facilitation or BCD for sales? It was not good to sell it from BCID, but people online are accustomed to go into a university course online or an academy course online. And I'm driving home one day from a friend's house and I'm sitting there thinking, well, it's not like there's a Neuroscience of Learning Academy. And then all of a sudden it's like, well, hell, I think we'll build a Neuroscience of Learning Academy. I mean, and we've got a learning scientist in the cognitive neurosciences as our dean. And then the only faculty members are people who are BCIDs and want to put their courses up here. So the goal is to have an ever expanding course lineup that anybody could go. So if I was in here and I said I wanted sales, and again, this isn't live right now, but if I just typed in sales, it would type up any course that has to do with sales taught by any faculty who was a part of this. And the only faculty who can be on part of this is BCIDs who have had their content curated. Yep.
No, it makes sense. And it's smart in terms of the expansion of like the work, you know what I mean? And the resonance and the offering. So
that was that was my other hat, is like, how can I take this body of knowledge and make it accessible to more people, and those more people I make it accessible to, how can I enable them to be a part of this herd in a place where instead of us all giving out different URLs to sell our stuff, we just say go to NOLA.academy.
Exactly. And as they go and discover our stuff, then they'll see other courses they want to take. And then obviously there's bundles and there's like an entire learning journey and learning path. And then they're going to want to get certified, of course, because, oh, I took a class on vision, which I think probably would be the smartest thing for me to do, is to do one on vision, because everyone would love that. And it would serve so many people, like vision and purpose, which is so powerful. And I can just, do one on that, and whoa, clarifying your vision and getting clear on your transformative purpose. But I think it would be amazing.
Yeah, and then we give you the education engine, which is the platform that you went through on the course that we had you go through. That same technology is yours. It's got the shopping cart built into it. You name your price, and all we do is work.
So this would be like the front facing, and the education engine would be where the course, the back end.
Yeah, where it resides. So I'll give you a real quick example here of the setup of this, since you asked. This. I think that's it. 1 second here. Yeah. So this is my mock that I gave to the developers who are doing it. In this case, it'll look prettier than this, but you saw what it is, and it's close. Here are all the courses that I'm loading in, that I have just to load in from T, as me as a faculty member.
Yep, you shared this with me, I think last week. Yep.
Yeah.
I don't think Maybe some added. Maybe you added a couple more.
Probably just a design of some stuff, but I mean, it's the goal was to show my designer what I had planned, and furthermore, let me get to the right one here. This is it. Yeah, this is it. So this is an even older one as we were working on this. But
Yeah,
this,
that might be. Yeah, that might be. This might be the one that you shared with me. Yep.
yeah, so this is older, and we've done the logo. I did it on 99 Designs. I don't know if you've ever used that site, but it's a group, thing where all these designers do stuff. So I had a bunch of logos made, and that one I showed
So
you.
the intrinsic growth and adaptive, that cadence is the cadence that we use when we're talking about this territory? Or
Yeah,
is it,
and you'll see that in the email that you didn't see prior to this call, where you're one of the PDFs in there, and you'll love it. I hope so. I mean, I'm presupposing, but it was great because I wrote it for you, but then I rewrote it for everybody. Where, okay, I'm doing this BCD thing. The way I looked at what you wrote me was, okay, I'm doing all this. What do I get out of it? What are my receivables?
oh, okay.
I mean, literally, the way I looked at it was that, because there were holes in your knowledge and what was going forward. What do I get out of this? What happens when I'm done? Am I safe? Am I? And I answer all those in those questions. In fact, let me pull up something real quick.
And for me, it wasn't about what I get out of it. It was more so, where is this going? So interesting, the different perception of it, because to me it was like, where is this going and what are we doing? More than what do I get out of it?
But I was just putting it down to street talk, which is one of my processes. I always try to get it, like if I'm on the street and I'm being assaulted and they say it in like 5 words, what are they really saying? And to me, it was like, what do I get out of this? So it wasn't a bad.
Because I'm so we focused. I'm like, where are we going? With all this, like I look at it, it's not just about what am I getting out of it. It's like, what are we doing here?
Yeah. And on the very first one, what does it mean to be a brain-centric instructional designer? That's your question rewrote. But the very first bullet point is perceive all 3 learning paradigms: intrinsic motivation, growth mindset, and what? Do you remember?
Adaptive.
There you go. Adaptive expertise. So when we're presenting a class, those 3 paradigms have to be, they're in this model, right? And then the facilitation is recognizing where they are, self-regulation, making sure you're giving them that, and choose at will where they want to be concerning current social context, which is a kind of a mouthful. But like today, if we look at the pandemic type of situation, we want to make sure that what we're presenting makes sense in that situation. So several times in what I showed you prior, we talked about in-person or online. I did that a lot, mostly for that particular piece. But the idea of this, what does it mean to be a brain-centric instructional designer, is you can build courses that keep them in these 3 paradigms, give them the opportunity to self-regulate their own behavior, and choose at will to keep them safe in whatever situation you're in, to make it comfortable to be there, like a dinner party, right? Okay. The second one, what are the BCD requirements before certification? You need to build a course. The course has 1 big idea, 2 scaffolding ideas, and the appropriate multiple perspectives. And then you must demonstrate this situation. I'm just going through this. You can read them at will. What are the essentials for every workshop? This is core. If I'm dancing and I'm trying to teach somebody to dance, this is home, right? There's none of this. This is home. Feel the music, right? So this is home when it comes to everything we do, what's called essential. Miller's Law and Hebb Rule. Without a doubt, 4 plus or minus 2 and cognitive rehearsal, or neurons that fire together, wire together, or connecting the 4 lobes of the brain. That's that. Then we have at the end of everything, we have the ability or the opportunity to reflect, revise our thinking, and then speak about that. And then finally, you gave me 7 questions, but a couple of them were like, send me some examples or whatnot. After certification, what happens? What we do is we support you in a number of ways. We've got a professional learning community on LinkedIn. We've got a Facebook page, a YouTube page, a Twitter page. We keep in touch every week, and we're there, especially at the beginning, to make sure you don't revert to default. That implementation dip you started feeling last week where you're saying, okay, I'm going to build one for this course. No, I'm not going to do any of this. I want to look at this differently.
Yeah. Well, it was also just the nature of, I'm teaching a course in 2 days for the, University of Lisbon, Nova University. And then I had all this other stuff happening and I was like, wait, okay, this seems like it's gonna, for me, it was more so about this seems more involved and I want to be able to understand it more deeply and do it well. And I don't want to charge people for something that I barely understand. And can I understand it well enough in a week and a half or enough for a week to develop it? And I was like, I don't, also the thing was, I don't want to stress myself out, especially if I have the power to design.
Because if you're stressed, it ain't gonna work. And at the end of here, and this is what I just showed you on the NOLA, on Academy, is not only that, but we want you to take this and go forward with it. We want you to have this on your resume to where you can say, here are all my classes online. And again, teach you how to take those classes. And like with BCD, and there's a lot of stuff in that course, but I've got 3 ways of selling it and monetizing that same information. When I'm not there, meaning you can do it at any time, 1 hour a week for this whole group or 1 hour a week just for you. And that depends on how involved somebody wants to get in with this. But the reason I went with this one with you when you first reached out is because of who you are and you go about things. I mean, you are a professional critical thinker in a particular vertical, and you've got this world experience, and it's beautiful to see how you expose blind spots in what we're doing just by your questions. And it's again, it's a collaboration for us as well, because you're adding to the puzzle. I will never go into a course thinking I know everything, because even if the group has 500 people in the group and I'm talking about BCD facilitation, I've got 500 people with their own thoughts and experiences about what facilitation is. Who am I to say, think my way? Mm-hmm. I only want you to think in a safe way, to create a safe room, to make every single action deliberate and with intent. You're not just filling space or being creative or thinking, oh, this will work. It's deliberate and it's intent. There's no wasted spot in our hour, especially when it's on a facilitation guide. You can't make it, but your friend Pam says she can do the class and she only has a day to prepare. You give her that facilitation guide and that deck and say, practice. And if worse comes to worse, put up the deck and read through that facilitation guide, because what you'll notice.
When do you get to see a mock deck and a mock facilitation guide?
Well, I will take this deck and build a facilitation guide for you and forward it as that example and template. Right. What I just did, because it's the format for everything.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just getting goosebumps because just by us saying yes and no, and then me asking these questions, and then you building that class and the class we just went through, and then you building this, I mean, you've essentially made the training even more robust, because these are questions that future people are going to want to know, and then you're going to edit this video and it's going to be golden for every other person that comes. So, I mean, powerful.
And that's the way you can do it too, because even when you're building multiple perspectives, and let's just say you're going to interview Deepak Chopra on vision, and you have an hour-long thing, and you're asking him these questions. Same kind of deal. He might say something that's like, "Oh my God, that 2 minutes would be the best perspective on vision ever," and you lift it out, and now you've got that content. Everything becomes content, because I don't know. I am not. That's the old model of teaching. I'm the sage on the stage. I know everything. Listen to me and repeat. That's what doesn't work. It fails everybody because it's memorization. But when somebody makes it their own, especially through questions where you feel safe in asking them and you get to talk them out, suddenly you own it. And you'll look at BCD now from this meeting on totally different than before, because it's like, oh, here's how you tie it together. Oh, it doesn't have to be an hour. Oh, it really has to be a challenge, because that's all about me. Different perspectives that tie the different parts of the lobe to that challenge. Opportunity to reflect, opportunity to collaborate and be social. opportunity to report out my findings and say I need still help with this. It becomes really complex, but really simple when you look at it that way.
And have you mapped it out? I guess you have, because when you guys do your training, it's on a learning journey. You know what I mean? And so that's the next step eventually for me, would be about like seeing, okay, what does it look like when it's just one course? And now that we've seen that one class, but now what is it? What would be a way of mapping it out within the context of a learning journey over a 3-day
Yeah, absolutely.
training, which would
Yeah.
be
Yeah, and I'll kind of leave you with an LT, long-term potentiation type of way of answering that. On a journey, when you're doing your nested egg, you're taking a nested egg and say, we're going to nested egg this journey. What I wanted to do with this particular class is give you that 30,000 foot view difference of facilitation. I've established that. Now let's say I want to get into the particulars of different models of the model would be next. So I showed you an hour. Let's look at a day. That would be a different wheel, because your working memories just figured out this facilitation thing. Go take a bio break, 15 minutes. We'll come back and do this after lunch, whatever. But one thing. What would be the next thing in this journey they really need to understand? Okay, now they get the concept, they need to understand they're not locked into an hour. That's a whole nother wheel. Then it might be, let's just work on a challenge. Just the challenge. And that might be an hour. Then we're gonna have a multiple perspective workshop. And that's gonna be over the next 2 days. Day 1 is gonna be these 2 perspectives, and we're gonna do it this way. Day 2 is gonna be these 2 perspectives and do it this way. 3 is going to be build your own course. On Friday, I want, we're going to have, everybody's going to build a course, but a couple people are going to present to the class. I mean, it's literally going step by step, not trying to cram it into an hour, because if you cram it into an hour, they're never going to get it. Today, we're going to cover these 12 things. I've already broke Miller's Law. Because I go into every one of these wheels, even though Miller is 4 plus or minus 2. In a pandemic, everybody's freaked out. World sucks. Where's my money coming from? I miss my peeps. I hate life. I'm only covering one thing in my wheel, because 2 things might be too much today. But on a good day and a good economy and the world's fine, no war, no sickness, no death, maybe 2. But literally I go to 1, because I want them walking away totally understanding that BCD facilitation is different than behaviorist facilitation. Now you get that. And forever, you'll look at stuff a little different, because it's like, oh, that isn't quite planned. Or if you do something without a facilitation guide, well, I'm going to wing this. Am I comfortable? Even when I wing it, I'll have notes saying, got to make sure I say this. Got to make sure I say deliberate and intentional, deliberate and intentional, deliberate and intentional. Because there is no waste. You don't want to do waste, because the working memory is too slow. Why would I tell you that, I got some of these things off of the story blocks, because it's a stock footage library, and I charge $69 a year or something like that. And I can get 20 downloads per day. And you're going, why the hell is he telling me this? This has nothing to do with facilitation. He's talking about going to get stock images. That should be on a building a perspective type of wheel. I want them to understand the concept of a template for facilitation, for a template for presentation that makes people think, which is BCD. That's the only goal of this, was just the facilitation part is different. It's plan, 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 plan. If, well, you're in advertising, but when I was in radio, what people never understood is if I would only be on the air for 3 hours in the morning, from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. They go, we got the cushiest job in the world. You only work 3 hours a day. I probably had about 9 hours into planning those 3 hours. That's what people don't understand about radio or media. Well, they just have an old woman saying, where's the beef? That couldn't have took but a day. No, it probably took about 100 people in 2 years to get to that day, to make it look so simple, where somebody was saying, where the beef on a square patty. Nobody understands that. And classrooms are like that. They're not today in school or in universities, because you're going to talk about world civilization since 1776, specifically about this Hiram Act in 1776. So you, as the sage, you know what to talk about. You can talk about examples, you can wax. And if somebody answers a question, it's typically the same kids answering the questions. you know how to answer it. But again, you're just asking them to parrot what you say, not uncover the information. So that's what uncovering versus covering means. The old model covers, blah, blah, blah. This model uncovers, sets it up so they can talk specifically on your big.
Deep learning and understanding.
Yeah, instead of an inch deep and a mile wide, it's an inch wide and a mile deep. I want them to understand this, not just talk conversationally, not just say, oh yeah, I know about that. And then when you ask them the real questions, they don't know anything. It's a big difference.
Cool. This is great. Thank you so much for taking the time to do to really go deep on this and to kind of really share, because now I feel it's so all the questions in terms of where to next and what are we doing and how and what my exploring more deeply my options in terms of what kind of course I want to build. Now I feel more compelled and prepared to be able to be like, okay, now that I understand what the what is, and I understand where we can place it, I understand what we can do. Now it's just a matter of what's going to be the first one,
Yay.
Awesome.
Well, have fun thinking of that. You had me at goosebumps earlier, so.
Yeah, no, I'm excited. You also have me thinking differently about my current presentation, which is only 20 minutes, but I have a lot to say. So now I'm going to tuck it in, cut it back. And I was going to try to cover, I might still just speak quickly about the shifts, because I've taken the adaptive, intrinsic, and growth. And I've actually, for me, because I was thinking about shifts. So I'm talking about the shifts that, we as leaders have to make. And I talk about the shift, but I call it a shift in mindset, which is obviously growth from fixed to growth. Mm-hmm. A shift in what I call motivations, obviously, from extrinsic to intrinsic. And then I speak about the shift in what I call them maneuvers. So the adaptive expertise, or the adaptive leadership also, but I talk about the shift in maneuvers, and then I talk about the shift in model. And so that's the 4 shifts that I've spoken about, but I'm kind of like, now I'm thinking, okay, do I even want to cover that or just stay fully in strategy and not go to shifts? So we'll see. But that's kind of what it makes sense for me in the business world, is like, you can have those 3 shifts, but if you're not also shifting the business models that move things. So I'm talking about a shift from essentially stakeholder capitalism to
stakeholder management.
Exactly. Stakeholder management to shareholder value, right? So this idea about looking at the whole ecosystem, and that's a shift we have to make from strictly thinking about the bottom line and our stakeholders to the entire system and the ecosystem of the shareholders that play a role in that. And so I want to talk, that's the additional shift that I think needs to be made in that context of business. So I've pulled in those 3, BCD kind of shifts, and then I've added the other shift, which is the shift that has to be made in the world of business. But we'll see. I might just talk about, I don't know, we'll see. I'm going to go back now and think about, in the context of what you just inspired within me in terms of shortening, I'm going to look at what is not essential and take that out. So thank you.
Yeah, well, you're very welcome. And it's so key. And not essential is just come back to that working memory. Do I want that in the way of what I'm really trying to get across, which is the big idea? That's why when we're building a course, before I go in, and I'll touch on this next week, but when I'm building a course, the very first 2 things I think of before anything is, what do I have to get across and how is it measured? That's it. Because if what I'm putting in my course doesn't touch on both of those, it doesn't fit. Why would I spend time giving you information about something that doesn't get me to the goal of this course, which is measured this way? A lot of people will call that, well, I was just being creative. I thought it would be fun. You know what I mean? Oh, this always works when I tell a joke about the cow. It's just great. Well, sure, it might be great, but it has nothing to do with what they're supposed to leave with. And like, even with the poll is such a different thing, especially if it's anonymous, and especially online with a group, or even in person. Online, anonymous in a group, you got 20 people, and you can see how the group thinks. And you say it this way, I'm not going to call out anybody and we can't see your vote. We just see that as a group, we thought 25% of the time students speak in class. No, it's 5%.
I know, that's why I made that face, because I thought it was 25.
Yeah, well, people all of a sudden, I mean, now you own it. It's like, oh God, I guess so. Think of any class you've ever went to. You might have had 5% of asking a question or 5% QA at the end, but the whole hour was a teacher in almost every class you've ever been in. And by class, I mean course, presentation, workshop, management meetings, sales presentation. You know, in sales, I go to sales a lot, but one of the other things I use in sales is he who talks most buys it. And it's true. If you're the salesperson and you're talking for the whole presentation, you're going to leave with no sale because you've spoken the whole thing. You've never once put that sell in their lap. How can you make them own that sale? Like, okay, give me 30 seconds. If you don't like what I have to say, show me the door. This is how I used to sell in radio. Rather than say, give me an hour, I'd like to ask you questions about your business and do this collaborative sale. Nobody's going to take an hour to educate me how to sell them. So what I would do is all this research, just like I did here. I would do all the stuff up front. I would go to your business. I would talk to customers. I would go off of my own experience of going into your business. Then I would come back to the radio station and I'd write a 30-second ad. And then I would call you back up and say, give me 30 seconds. If you want me to speak more after that, I will. And promise you, it'll be like a best sales call in the world. And it is a sales call. I'm here to get you more customers. So give me 30 seconds. If you don't like what I say, show me the door. 9 times out of 10, I'd get that appointment. I would go in there with a big boom box. This is back in the 80s, 90s. And I come in with a big boom box, say, hey, I'm Rich Carr. I told you I had 30 seconds. Here's how it works. Boom, I'd hit play. And I'd always have it too loud. And then I would stop and rewind that commercial because I'd say, hey, when's the last time your newspaper made that kind of noise? Ha, ha, ha. Anyway, then I'd pay the 30 seconds, which would be an awesome commercial. And it would be because I was really good at writing and producing and all that stuff. Then it's like, do you want to talk more about this? Or you want me to leave? They always want to talk because it was them in that commercial. It was their name. It was everything they wanted people to hear. It was true. They didn't know this at the time, but I would do disequilibrium in that. I would say, don't forget, that's Ozioma's. Oops. Can you see me? I just had a thing saying my internet went bad. Do you see me okay? Mm-hmm. Okay. I said, don't forget, that's Ozioma's on 6th Street next to McDonald's. And you'd go, that's great, except I'm on 6th Street next to Burger King. Now you own it. That's how I sold radio.
Wow. Impressive.
I mean, I would have proposals and everything, of course, and I would have 3 options. They'd always pick B, 90% of the time. It was before I knew about neuroscience. I knew that the brain acted in certain ways, and I knew they loved to hear their own voice because of what was it? Not Wayne Dyer. The favorite word in everybody's vocabulary is their own name. That was Dale Carnegie. Dale Carnegie. So Dale Carnegie was all about people hearing their own name. So that's what the spec spot was. It was 30 seconds of them hearing everything they wanted to hear in a commercial that they never knew, unless I did a bad job on that commercial. And that's pretty much the same of what this is. If you prepare with a known methodology and template, you'll do better than the next guy. And the typical sales model was, hey, if you make 30 calls and you get, 1 sale, that means you need 90 calls to make 3 sales. And I'm sitting there thinking, why the hell would I waste 29 calls? I would rather make 3 calls and get 3 sales. That's me. And working up front, people always loved it because, you drop them, you can give them the cassette when you leave, again, the 80s, give them that cassette when you leave and just say, hey, use this on your next commercial or something. Always get the order, always top biller. And it was because that's how people think. And if sales is a transfer of emotion and sales is a synonym for education, because it's giving new information to somebody and having them think your way, then it's all the same. I'm just introducing new information, and to make it really work, you've got to accept it as your information, not mine.
Got it. Beautiful.
Yay.
Well, this has been great. I'm looking forward to our next session. And I guess my question is, am I meeting with you next session, or am I back to Kieran, or how is this going here on out?
It's up to you. I might stay with this because I'm on it. I mean, a lot of the ways Kieran and I do something, and he's the science and I'm the application of that science. I understand it, but he's really good at teaching teachers how to teach, and I'm really good at the same thing but in a different way. But because we're on this yarn, it will be me, but he'll be a part of it as well. Because
And what's happening with what's her name? Yeah, because I reached out to her to be like, hey, should we be connected? She's like, oh, I've been launching my program, and so I didn't really hear back from her if we were going, so I just kept with it. But is that going well as well too? Everybody's kind of
she's literally on the same thing. She's built a 12-week, or is building a 12-week course on it has to do with, I forget the name of it, but it has to do with getting your kids out of the school route, because she's a classroom teacher, K-12 teacher. And I forget the title of it because I've been thinking about you on this, but it's building those things out. And so she's doing the same thing you're doing, but she's doing it on a one big wheel a week, 1 day long wheel a week for her group. Of
1 day long wheel. I'm very fascinated. And so they meet live and they do one wheel a week, and it's one full day. Wow. Okay. Cool.
Because then you're given, assignments, but not necessarily assignments per se, not stressy assignments. Kind of like you with Goosebumps is like, oh, now I can do this. Oh, I got freedom. I have all this flexibility. And that's the goal of this, is to say, okay, you knew the model, and then you put yourself into disequilibrium by going, what if, I don't know, which meant you took it intrinsic. That's so essential, to put somebody in the point where, yeah, this is cool, but what if? But that's all about you. It wasn't about I or me. It's like, okay, Rich, I got to this point, but what the hell? Boom, you own it.
Yeah, I get it.
And it's really wonderful when that happens, because now you don't have to memorize anything. It's like, how do I do this? I want to do this. That's all me. That's fun. That's the brain. That's how you're hardwired. How can I use this to make me better? Oh, I've got all this flexibility now. Killer. I could never cover this in a day. Too much stuff.
Yeah. Cool. Well, until the next session, this has been great, and I'm looking forward. I'm got my wheels turning, and yeah.
All right. Well, email with any questions, and I don't know why that didn't pop up on your email thingy, but
I'm gonna have to go and check my email. It must be like the new emails aren't stacking up. I'll handle that. The other thing is, I guess when you get a chance, then I'll get this recording, and then, or whatever you edit, and then the facilitation guide and all that other stuff. Because what I envision is that when I go to build, I'm going to build it all.
Yeah.
And then I'll get feedback and all that. But I'm going to try to build at least the experience all in one, because I'm going to free up in about next week and the week after. I get a little freer, so I'll have more time to consider this stuff.
Well, then next Monday, what I'll do is literally take you through the steps of building it. To our, it's a rewrite. We talked about advertising before. It's a rewrite. In my case, it's a super rough draft, like what I call a scratch rough draft, and then a draft, and then a PPP or PPT draft, and then the tweaking of the PPT, and then the facilitation guide. It's a lot of prep, but it's forever. So if I put all this stuff into this one course, I can teach this course for the next couple of years and make bank. And every time it's going to be great. And every time it also is malleable, because let's just say I did this and it works great, but I get to the third presentation of it. And it's like, you know what? All three of those presentations, they all asked about this thing. I'm going to tweak this thing because they've showed me over time that I'm not quite hitting this. we always have to learn. And just because I built the course doesn't mean that it's good forever. This course in February would be different than March, because February we weren't in quarantine, and I might adjust it a little bit for quarantine. Instead of in person, I'm going to focus more online because nobody is in person anymore. And I did a post recently. It was really well received, but I took a quote from Forbes article and I said, if it can, in the future, if it can be taught online, it will. Mm-hmm. That horse is out of the barn. I'm going to miss people too in a group like that, but it's going to be online. It will still be in person, of course, but if you're not online, you miss. And that's where that thought a few weeks back, where it's like, it's not like there's a Neuroscience of Learning Academy. And then I look in the mirror, it's like, oh, that's what I need. I build all these academies for businesses like, Aetna and Nike and their universities and whatnot, but I hadn't put one up there for ourselves. And it was just a super giant blind spot. And I was making fun of myself. It's not like there's a Neuroscience of Learning Academy. What an opportunity. And then we take everybody learning this and they get their faculty and they have a place to point. It's kind of like iTunes, but instead of you being, Roberta Flack, you're Ozioma. And boom, you've got your own discography. People can select, you can point to, say, this is our things. You can embed this in, oh no, I forgot. Bright, your website, Bright?
Yeah, Bright. Yeah, Burn Bright.
Yeah, so you could have a framed up page and the T is set that way to where you can send them and it'll look like it's on your site, but it's posted on T and they just go there to get it.
I'm actually launching a new one, Ozioma.io, because my Ozioma.com has been taken by these Nigerians who have never done anything with it, and they have it to like 2050, whatever. And so I was like, I really want an Ozioma. And then people were like, well, you're in the world of tech. Why don't you just get the IO? And I was like, of course. So Ozioma.io, which is perfect.
Right.
Yeah,
so I mean, when you build that out and you have just a frame page, programming at all?
A little bit, please. Like
Okay,
WordPress.
Well, it's just called an iframe page. And
iframe and just embed it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so T has, sorry, my Google got caught on something. T has, once you build a course, it has an embed code. So you could literally just take that embed code, throw it in your iframe, and it's hosted. It looks like it's hosted on your thing. Cool. So give you a lot of options to regurgitate this, how it best works.
I'm excited. This is great. I'm looking forward.
Right on. Okay, well, you go in and
faculty. I'm going to be like, Faculty of Singularity University, Faculty of Neuroscience of Learning Academy. Boom, boom, boom. Just faculty it up.
all because you sent me a note on LinkedIn.
Crazy, and all because Scribed served you guys up. I think that's how it all began. I think I might have typed in neuroscience, and then Scribed put your book up, and I was just like, for some reason I was listening, and then I wasn't so committed, and then at some point I just was like, whoa, what's happening here? It was getting to me, and that's how it began. So I'm gonna follow up too, because the mail situation, I don't know if you want to, but I have to go pick up the stuff from the mail. And
yeah, and do you need that in an email, or do I have to mail it and wait for the mail again?
Email is fine if you can do it via email, and then
I'll have that to you today.
It's so crazy that's what has to happen in Portugal. I have to go there with proof. I'm just like, why can't I just say it was a gift, right? I mean, did you send it as a gift, or how did you send it?
Yeah, no, I sent it as a gift, and I had to, on my end, declare what it was. I said it was a book and a cards, and then they said, what's the value? And I said the value was $100. And so to you, I can show you those screens and say, hey, those books I gifted to you are worth X and Y. Here's the proof of that.
Okay. Because now they're going to tell me I have to pay 23% on the 100. I think is what's going to end up happening. So ridiculous. It's extortion.
Well, send me a Venmo or PayPal, and I'll pay you for that. You shouldn't have to pay for that.
It's just crazy how this goes. This country is very strange like that.
Well, Italy is the same way, so I empathize, because I know just to get anything mailed, you have to go through that archaic. It's almost like you're going into a bank.
Exactly. So yeah, that's what they want. It's actually this. I'm going to just hold this quickly. It just basically says that I have to bring my own NIF, which is fine, and then the commercial fatura and pay proof of payment, and then a print screen of the declared value. So it might be the print screen of where it is online.
Yeah, they're both on Amazon, so I'll pull them up and
Yeah,
print
the
those
Amazon
out.
print screens, and then I'll go and print that out and then bring that to them and stay there for like an hour in a mask because it's going to take forever to get it. But I'm going to do that on Thursday. But
Sorry.
listen, I mean, no, I'm thankful. Thank you. And also, I think it's going to make a difference in terms of having the book, having the cards, and it'll just pull everything together. And I'm very excited. And I also know that once this journey is done, I'm sure there's tons of other people that I know that are also going to want to either take the foundational course, like my best friend took the course and she bought the course, or do the second version or the third version. So I know that there's more people on there.
No, that's wonderful. And again, anything I can do, I'll get that thing to you today, but anything else throughout the week, if you go, oh, email me.
Yeah, great.
And I'll get back to you on it. And I'll
Awesome.
probably send you some other things as well. Just
cool. And I'll make sure my email can receive it. I think it's because I'm on like the 5 GoDaddy workspace emails, and they've been going through some challenges. And anyway, but I'll clean it up and make sure that we're good to go. All right, Rich.
all right. Have a wonderful evening. Thanks again.
Take care. Thank you.
Bye.